Welcome back to Watches Live, the only show we film here on Watchbox Reviews. Guys, thank you for joining me from around the world. Tonight we have an impressive selection from the three major watchmaking nations. We have Switzerland, we have Germany, and we have Japan. Watches from every product class, and yes, if you saw the thumbnail, I have a Patek Philippe 5970p on the table. I'm going to save the best for last, but I'm going to jump to something unusual first because frankly, I've seen a 5970p before. I've never seen one of these. This is the 1997 to 2000 Omegamatic. It's a Seamaster, 37.5 millimeters in diameter. Actually, it's a 36.5 to 37.5, depending on where you measure it. But it is a 200-meter tritium dial kinetic quartz Seamaster that features a Omega 1400 caliber, just like a Seiko kinetic. There is a rotor in the back of this watch that converts your wrist motion into energy. It then energizes either a battery or capacitor, depending on the generation of the watch. The later ones use batteries, and it maintains a power reserve of right about 100 hours, meaning this is one of the most unusual watches you can buy from the 1990s era of Omega. It features the same 5-link James Bond bracelet from the Seamaster chronometers, but what this one offers that one doesn't is a weird combination of mechanical soul and quartz precision, and it has an actual tritium dial. This one is guaranteed to burn your bearings, because even if you're not into quartz watches, the combination of borderline vintage tritium dial and automatic winding is going to cause serious mental conflicts and emotional strife. I love it, and I can wholeheartedly endorse it, but then again, I've always been behind luxury quartz. What do you guys think about this one? It even features a yellow gold medallion on the clasp, and the clasp features a sweet slider system so that it will actually size to your wrist. I adore this thing, and I'm actually kind of thinking of buying it for my mom. This thing is really neat. I'd probably wear it myself. Okay, friends joining us from around the world. Let's see who's in. Matt Foster, you're first in the box. Eric Cecil, Mozart Revi, Fjord Prefect. I can see howdy here. Howdy, you JLC-free person, you. I still have my vintage Snowdrop, and I'll always have the memories. I can see right here we have Andrew, ST12, Philip Hayden, Simon Holt, Rasmus, Jeff, Justin, JBO Surf from Adelaide, Australia, and Steve Bowden. Welcome, guys. Oh, and look, Greg Sherlock from Sydney, Australia. I'm dominating down under tonight. Thank you for getting up early to join me. All right, from Omega, let's go to Rolex. From an older watch, let's go to something that is bleeding edge new. The most complicated Rolex of all time. It's the Rolex Sky Dweller. This baby bowed at Bosworld 2012. The model you see here, full rose gold with silver champagne dial, ever rose, red gold I should say, bowed in 2014. This is a $50,000 Rolex, and for once I can say a lot of the money is spent on the mechanism, as the steel watch costs about 1/3 as much, so you're still spending a lot of money when you buy the GMT 3-day power reserve, chronometer certified annual calendar system. But I want to show you how it actually works. We've talked a lot about this watch in the past on the channel, and at 42 millimeters, it is one of the larger Rolex watches, though you'll note it doesn't feature the super case profile. It is like a giant Datejust, Date-8, or Daytona in case profile. Let's talk about how this system actually works. Now you pull the crown out, and assuming the bezel is turned all the way clockwise, when you withdraw the crown from its standard position, it just freewheels. It does nothing. But we turn the bezel, now we turn it one click in a counterclockwise direction, and you will see, let me actually show you, just underneath the minute hand, you can see the date. Now as I adjust it forward and backwards, and it is a bi-directional calendar, note the aperture outboard of 9. That is your indicator for the month, 12 hours, 12 months. That little jumping red flag in the aperture tells you which month it is. 9 is September, 8 is August, and you can see the bi-directional calendar system right underneath the minute hand, jumping in either direction. That's how you set the calendar system, because the Rolex Helios calendar system uses wheels. It can be set bi-directionally. Okay, now let's turn it one more click counterclockwise. Now I can set the local hour hand independently. Note the watch doesn't stop ticking, the minute hand doesn't move, and I'm not affecting the 24-hour reference time or your home time. That's the time where you are not. Now I turn one more click counterclockwise, and everything moves in sync. This bezel is actually part of the caliber 9001 3-day power reserve chronometer movement. It's called a ring command bezel, and if I want to set everything back, I'm done setting my watch. Now I turn the Bezel all the way over. You'll note turning the crown does nothing. That is how ring command works, and that is how you set your Rolex Sky Dweller. It really could not be more simple. It's an absolute pleasure to use and a marvel of engineering. The most complicated Rolex ever made. Jumping back in right here, I can see Howdy here asking, I am wearing a Zin U1. How about y'all? Actually, I'm wearing a Zin myself. I'm wearing the EZM 1.1. We can do a quick wrist shot. For those of you who are new to this watch, it is new to me. This is going to be my solo aviator for a while. I'm going to pare down my collection a little bit, simplify. You're going to see a lot of this tegimented wonder on my wrist. I love it, and you're also going to see it on the other strap, which is silicone and clasp mounted. You're also going to get to meet some of my other collection watches that you've never heard of before, like my Blue Rebel from my mom, Christmas 2013, and an Accutron I bought myself in my first job out of college. Okay, jumping in, I can see, oh my goodness, we got quite a few friends joining us from the UK, from Sweden, from Finland, and Steve Bowden saying he likes that. Oh, Abdul Rahman, right here, Zin 356 with copper dial. Yes, I have seen that watch, 38.5 millimeters with a gorgeous guilloche stamped copper dial. I adore that piece. You sent me a wrist shot for one of my shows. I'm a huge fan of that pilot too. Okay, let's jump into the straight up high horology. Let's go with something crazy. Let's go with Lange. Now, there are two things in common between these watches. They're both made in Germany, and their cases are made at the exact same company, because on the case back of this Lange 1 moon phase is a little stamp that says SUG, and that SUG stamp is the stamp of Zin's case maker. In Glashütte, they own a case maker that builds the precious metal cases for Lange. So there's a little bit of Zin sports watch in Lange, and you thought Lange didn't do sports watches. 38.5 millimeters in white gold. You can see one of the most astounding moon phase displays in the industry, not because of its complexity, but because of its richness. It's been galvanized and varnished on top of a solid gold disc, with the result that the blue cosmos has an almost holographic three-dimensional aspect, and the richness of the stars and the moon exactly what you would expect of a solid gold chunk of metal. Everyone else pretty much deposits on a sapphire disc or a piece of brass. Lange sparing no expense. Manual wind, 3-day power reserve, and gorgeous. You can see this one features the more modern Lange free-sprung balance architecture with the variable inertia balance bolts. We may as well wind this one up. Twin mainspring barrels, 3-day power reserve, and you will note all of the styling conventions of Glashütte watchmaking in the modern era. Now, while most of them are drawn from the pocket watch era, the fact is that what we call Glashütte wristwatch style in the modern era is pretty much exclusively a product of Lange. So you have the 3/4 bridge, you have the German silver or nickel copper zinc, giving it that golden hue. When you have Swiss movements, generally you have silvered rhodium plated brass, and for an example of that, I'm going to show you this gorgeous Patek Philippe 5170R. But my point is that the hue, the tone, and the reflective qualities of the movement are quite different. Silvered brass, what's known as German silver, or if we're in French watchmaking regions, we would call it maillot. Now, there's more going on here. Note that all of the barrel and train jewels are set in chaton, so fixed by screws. They are separate settings for the jewels. In the pocket watch era, because of limits to the precision of machining equipment, it was easier to create a small chaton or a cup to hold the jewel and then fix that to the plate with screws. The screws are all heat blued, and you'll note the end of the power train, the balance, features a half bridge that is entirely freehand engraved. So no two are exactly alike. Every Lange features a small amount of freehand engraving. And let's face it, either side of this watch could be considered equally iconic. They even give you lume. Friends from around the world, I can see Daniel saying, the movement is covered as the 3/4 plate is popular in Germany. Indeed it is. A big reason for that being, Lange made a decision back in the early 1990s. They spent 4 years designing their watches from 1990 until they unveiled their first 4 models at Dresden Castle in October 1994. And they decided that they were going to look at how the pocket watches were made back in the era of East German watchmaking prior to the Soviets. And then they were going to take as many of those conventions as they could and translate them to wristwatches, which is is one of the reasons why almost everything we associate with the style of a German movement today is actually pocket watch revival courtesy of Lange. Even Glasuta Original and Nomos have copped the style from Lange. Okay, all the way around the world, and I do mean all the way around, a watch that is larger than life, dedicated to a festival that is, in its locality, itself larger than life. The Onbashira festival occurs every 6 years in the Nagano Prefecture Lake Suwa region, which is the manufacturing home of Grand Seiko's micro artist studio. The watch you see here came out in 2016. It is the black ceramic Onbashira limited edition. And if we can get super close to the dial, you can see not only is it tree green, which I adore, but there are small trees embossed onto the dial. That's what that pattern is. The Onbashira are the 4 pillars at the corner of traditional Shinto temples and shrines in the Lake Suwa region. Every 6 years, they cut new Onbashira to replace the old ones. They're made of wood, so they degrade, and the folks involved in the festival actually ride the logs down the hills and then pull them across bodies of water to the shrines, with the result that almost every year people get hurt or killed. I've said it's almost a kinder, gentler, and less deadly version of America's Daytona Bike Week. Now, there's a lot going on here. The case is a combination of grade 5 titanium, so it can never shatter all the way through, and 2016's big news at Grand Seiko, which was the launch of their first ever ceramic case. So you have ceramic clad titanium. If you were to completely shatter this cladding, you could simply remove it, it's fixed by screws, and replace the part, rather than having to face a 4-figure case replacement. Omega, IWC, and Panerai haven't figured this out yet, but you can create an entirely ceramic-covered watch without risking a straight-through fracture. Closest Panerai has come is composite, and it just ain't the same thing. It's spring drive, guys, and it's automatic. But what I love is that this spring drive automatic is not only driven entirely by its spring energy while giving you quartz-like precision, but you can actually see the column wheel chronograph mechanism activating with its levers, horns, and traditional column wheel structure right on the case back. It features a vertical clutch for super smooth engagement of that sweeping spring drive seconds hand, and yes, you get a second time zone. Does this watch do it all? Well, with 100-meter water resistance and a nearly indelible, scratch-proof ceramic case, this is as good as it gets if you're looking for larger than life. 46.4 millimeters. Let me throw this on the wrist, because I want to prove that this giant is a gentle giant. It fits a smaller wrist, and I actually included that watch, if you're into these things, in my Versus video for this coming weekend. So if you know our Versus series on this channel where we compare 2 watch, this is going to go head-to-head with a Panerai. Now, this is 52 millimeters lug-to-lug, which means you could wear it on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. It's big, the style is big, but the fit is comfortable. Titanium is light. Ceramic is 25% lighter than steel, so this watch wears small. Eyes closed, I'd never guess it's over 46. You'll also note it has a very handsome compound calfskin and alligator strap with a green contrasting stitch and a green underlay. I adore this piece. 600 pieces. A limited edition for the Onbashira Festival 2016. By the way, guys, if you're watching and you've participated in that festival, let me know in the chat box. I want to know what that's like, because the photos look absolutely insane. Okay, jumping in right here. Mark S. Tim, would you consider talking about the difference in shock protection between different types of springs, Inca block, KIF, etc.? What do springs do, and which kind are the best? I'm going to say that between the likes of Inca block, KIF, Edashock, Grand Seiko has its own Diashock. They all do basically the same thing. The only time you're going to see meaningful differences in the shock resistance of watches is when secondary shock protection systems are added. So if you've got a Glasuta Original Sport Evo Impact with the rubber buffers between movement and case, if you have the same thing in the Bremont shock protected systems, like you'll find on the Boeing series, like you'll find on the Martin Baker, like you'll find on the Supermarines, or if you have something like a suspended movement, in a Richard Mille, or even the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Compressor Extreme cases. All of those add a case-based shock protection system. So you've got the shock protection generally on the balance staff, which is the pivot for the balance, and sometimes on the escape wheel staff, which is the pivot for the escape wheel. But to actually protect the entire movement, you need more than just a spring. You need to physically isolate the movement from the motion of the case. And that's why you really have to look at the secondary shock protection systems used, because all of the springs are pretty much the same in this day and age. The shock on the staff is pretty much the same, regardless of the design. In general, having your own just means saying you make it in-house. Rolex Paraflex. But if you do have something like, and this is the one exception from what I just said, de Bethune's triple parachute, then you have shock protection on the staff, on the pivot, but you also have shock protection on the edge of the balance bridge using their own proprietary shock protection system. That gives you 3, and that does kind of change the game. By the way, de Bethune, they should have a years-long wait list. I don't understand how Richard Mille can charge $1 million for that Stallone thing. You wait 2 years to get a Rolex Daytona, but a de Bethune is available on demand right now. It's a wild world. Baby, baby. Okay, right here, I can see Noel saying, Tim, you sold me on an SBGM 221. Thanks so much for your review, guys. That's what I do. I share the passion. I partake of which I speak. Even in a pared-down collection state, I still believe. Now, let's see what else I've got, because we talked about ceramic, but I'm jumping back into Switzerland from Japan, all the way around the world. This time we're flying first class, we're flying Top Gun. This is the 2012 to 2015 reference 3880, the Pilot's Watch Chronograph Top Gun. This is the closest we'll ever get to a ceramic big Pilot's Watch chronograph. 46 millimeters, this is not a gentle giant like the Grand Seiko. That one, 46, is 52 millimeters lug to lug. This is just over 58. This thing has a wingspan, appropriate for an oversized pilot's watch. It is ceramic and it is tough. It has a different finish than the gloss of the Seiko. This isn't polished, this is matte. Perhaps a bit more discreet in the German-Swiss mode and idiom that is the rule at IWC. It does have a fantastic dial. The indices at 12, 3, 6, and 9 are solid blocks of luminova, and you'll note the counterweight to the seconds hand is a little US jet style. Let's call it an F-18, even though the profile isn't quite right. But it's a US jet style counterweight. To remind you that Top Gun is the nickname of the US Navy Fighter Weapons School and Advanced Tactics Instruction. I should actually mention, this is not the logo of the program. This is the logo from the movie. That said, the hardware is for real. Flyback chronograph caliber, manufacturer 89365. The 365 is different from the 361 because it features a mono counter for 60 minutes without the hour hand. The 361 features hours and minutes on a counter at 12. This is literally one hand, 60 minutes, and I prefer that to a conventional chronograph because being able to read 60 minutes makes the watch more practical. Most chronographs are 30 only. You have the flyback functionality, reset and restart with the push of a button, Peloton winding system, highly shock resistant, 68-hour power reserve, vertical clutch, and column wheel actuation. This one features anti-magnetism courtesy of an internal soft iron cage, 60-meter water resistant, just good enough for swimming per IWC, and a unique blowout protection system, which I'll mention my Zin also has. So if it's in a cockpit or a cabin that explosively decompresses an airplane at altitude, it will not eject the crystal, nor will it undermine the integrity of its seals. Is that more than you need? Oh hell yeah, but that's what luxury is all about. Jumping back to our chat box, I can see Hale Bop saying that might be his least favorite IWC. Sorry, no apologies necessary. Taste is individual. This is all about what you love, and we don't all love the same thing. That said, I think the next watch is going to be pretty universal. Jump into Fjord Prefect saying gaudy, that's a fact. Mark Essing, Tim, what did Tom Cruise wear in Top Gun? A flight jacket? Honestly, I don't recall. I thought the motorcycle was cool. His girlfriend's Porsche 356 was awesome, but for the life of me, it was probably some Casio quartz thing. Watches weren't hip in the 80s. Okay, this is a watch that almost everyone is going to love. Lange Saxonia Annual Calendar. This was one of the stories of Lange's SIHH 2010. 38.5 millimeters, rose gold, annual calendar, outsized date, the Panorama Datum, and this is the caliber L08. micro rotor automatic, 46-hour power reserve, an exceptional piece. Here's what I love. Not only does it feature a 3/4 style micro rotor, but if you get really close to it, it is double precious metal. It is a gold rotor with a platinum mass, hand engraved. Who does that? It's a platinum mass with a gold rotor. You're lucky from the Swiss these days if they give you a gold rotor, period, and generally it's 18 karat. Most of the Swiss luxury brands are moving to tungsten these days. Lange gives you 2 precious metals, a hand-engraved gold portion. They've even fixed the platinum to the gold with blued screws. How gorgeous is that? Lange, always doing things differently. And I should mention, because I'm a sucker for stuff like this, because this is based on the Saxomat automatic, it features not just hacking seconds, but a 0 reset system. Watch the seconds dial at 6 o'clock. When I pull the crown, it resets to 0 to make synchronizing that much easier. I love you, Lange. And yes, you can get it in white gold. That's the watch that I think everyone is going to love. If you don't love that, check for a pulse. Okay, and I can see Dave Ebb saying that is a beautiful Lange, and Steve Bowden agreeing right here. Avi B, gotta love the Saxonia Annual Calendar. However, I prefer the 1815. To each his own. Lange makes quite a few. The one thing you're never going to get from Lange is a sports watch. And that's why we got Zinn. Same case factory. Oh, right, jumping back here, I can see Adina saying, forever Patek Philippe 5112. And I can see Mark Taylor is a fan of the Lange. Roberto is saying, I love the IWCs, the anti-aspirational thing. Newbies won't aspire to own one. I've got an IWC that no one talks about on the table, but it's part of my favorite family of IWC watches. I've always been all about the Portofino, which means I'm probably the only one. But this watch right here debuted in 2011, which was the last year of the Portofino at IWC. Those years don't come around too often. 42 millimeters in stainless steel. This is the reference 391008. Gorgeous with black dial, applied indices, foy or leaf style hands, and a polished case. It evokes the original Hanno-Bircher designed giant Portofino of the 1980s. Guys, different tab, open a new window, but look up the IWC 5251 if you want to see something truly special. Engineered by Kurt Claus and designed by Hanno-Bircher, that giant, also known as the fried egg for obvious reasons, informs the basic shape of this modern Portofino. You can see that they use a little bit of liberties because the giant Portofino wasn't a chronograph, but they recall the mid-century with these gorgeous mushroom-style pump pushers, the foy hands, and the grace of this pocket watch-inspired case with straight lugs. It's the anti-Portuguese, which has those gorgeous blended Art Deco inspired lugs. This evokes an era before Art Deco, and it's important to remember that the giant Portofino was basically a pocket watch with lugs welded on, and this watch recaps that in a smaller size. Solid case back because, hell, cards on the table, it's a Valjoux 7750 in there. This is a great value in German-Swiss watchmaking. The king of complications, the chronograph, with the everyday friendly complication, the day-date. And I'll throw it on the wrist so you can see what it looks like. If you want to get into IWC, but you're not about pilot's watches, you're not an armchair aviator, and everyone's got a Portuguese, get a Portofino. The prices are more appealing, there's great selection, and you're going to find IWC watches you never knew existed. Do you know they make a mono-pusher column wheel chronograph? You do now. 8-day manual wind, that watch. That's part of the Portofino family, but this is the bedrock. This is the core of the family, and this is the one that I would keep. If they were all in a burning building, this is the one I would carry out. The king of the Portofinos, the 3910. All right, jumping down. When is the Luminor 1950 Amro always keeping me on track? David Ebb is asking, loom or no loom for that Portofino? No, the Portofino family generally has no loom. Okay, Amro, you want the Luminor 1950? You got it, my man. This is one of the longest names in the annals of Panerai. The minimalist brand, a maximalist watch. A bit of a contradiction. This is the Panerai Luminor 1950 Chrono Monopulsante 8 days GMT PAM 317. It's a mouthful. 44 millimeters in black ceramic. This is another watch from this coming weekend's Versus. It's going to be squared up against the Grand Seiko. Now, this model came out in 2008. The first versions featured a caliber 2004 with black PVD bridges and plates. That was a manufacturing disaster. The L series, starting in 2009, that you see right here, featured a smoked black sapphire over the caliber 2004 manufacture movement. better quality control results. 8 days, manual wind, GMT, mono pusher chronograph, column wheel, vertical clutch, and yes, this features Panerai's own version of a zero reset system. You just saw zero reset on the Lange. This 8-day mono pusher chronograph GMT, watch the double register at 9, features its own zero reset seconds. Why? Because the caliber 2004, like all of the 2000 series movements, was absurdly over-engineered. Designed by Eric Klein of Richemont's Valfleurier movement manufacturer, back in the early 2000s, they launched in 2005, and they were a revelation. Going from ETA to these movements was overkill for Panerai. Later on, they would decontent their in-house movements, but if you want a Panerai in-house, don't compromise. Get one of the 2000s. This watch proving how much you get in pre-owned Panerai. $21,500 new, $13,000 pre-owned, and because it has that indelible ceramic case, including the crown guard, it hasn't aged a day since it came off the line in 2009 at Panerai's Neuchâtel manufacture. An absolute torch in the dark. It features a traditional three-dimensional Panerai sandwich dial with a stencil over a fully loomed disc. I'm going to throw this one on the wrist. This is a big watch, no joke guys. Almost 55 millimeters lug to lug, but you're probably never gonna see another one. And even though it's highly complicated with a couple of through case fittings, it still pulls off 100 meters water resistance. So this is very much an everyday watch. I will say this though guys, 19.3 millimeters thick thanks to that plexiglass evocative domed sapphire. This watch has a lot of character. It helps if you're a character too. It just eases the process of pulling this off. A character deserves a character. That's one of those watches that will force you to be an ambassador for the luxury watch community, because people are going to ask earnest questions about that watch. Be ready to deliver. Okay, let's conclude this thing with a bang. I've got two watches that I'm going to show you that will blow your mind because they are both accessible and fantastic. Okay, from Omega and Grand Seiko, two of the latest flavors. These party favors hail from 2017 and 2018. First, 2018. We're going to start with the more recent watch. This is the 2018 Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter, the 25th anniversary Seamaster 300. This is the watch descended from that original Bond Seamaster, now with ceramic dial, 42 millimeter case, and check out the bracelet profile, guys. Now, the case, 50 millimeters lug to lug, features pivoted end links. So the pivoted end link no longer projects beyond the edge of the case. You'll note that the helium escape valve now has a conical profile. With its fluting, it looks a little bit like a Reese's peanut butter cup. The clasp has been dramatically upgraded. No longer simply the all or nothing fold out dive extension. It now includes the push button slider from the Planet Oceans, meaning with the 13.7 millimeter thickness of this Diver 300, you ask, why on earth do we need a Planet Ocean when the basic Diver 300 is so deluxe? And I happen to agree with you. All applique dial, iconic skeleton hands, and for the first time in a series production Diver 300, a display caseback over the Matas certified master chronometer caliber 8800, 55-hour power reserve, 6-position adjusted Matas fully cased up chronometer test of resistances, water, shock, and magnetism, winding efficiency, and power reserve. This is the highest level of dive watch manufacture you can buy at any price. The industrial might of ETA and Omega is unrivaled by anything out there except the Seiko empire. You can buy more expensive watches, but you can't buy something more industrially perfect, not even from Rolex. Once again, why do we need Planet Oceans in a world where this exists? Throwing it on the wrist, you can see the 42 actually wears more compact due to the fact that it now features those pivoted end links. What used to be over 53 millimeters lug to lug is now a straight 50, even though the watch is now a 42. Obviously, you can get different colored dials. I happen to prefer the ceramic with a chromium plate. That'll show up on the channel as a review in a few days. Jump into the other watch. 2017, Grand Seiko is the new dial headline at Grand Seiko. That should be elementary, but prior to 2017, at 12 o'clock on a Grand Seiko, it said Seiko. Now it says Grand Seiko. It was a big deal in Japan. Not much has changed. The watch is still the SBGC 203, redesignated from the 003 because the dial changed. It's a chronograph. It's a vertical clutch column wheel mechanical chronograph built on a 3-day power reserve automatic spring drive. It features a GMT. It's 100 meters water resistant. The case is 43.5 millimeters, and it features the world's most over-exaggerated screw-down chronograph pushers, but you'll like them because you can actually manipulate them with bare, wet, sweaty, or even gloved hands. Now I'm going to throw this one on the wrist. Zaratsu case polish, immaculate dial fabrication. If you thought Grand Seiko's cases were good, and they are, it's the dial of a Grand Seiko that's going to take your breath away because you don't see it coming. Diamond polished, diamond faceted hands and indices. The dial of every Grand Seiko is like a gem, and this one just gives you that much more hand-finished, hand-placed dial furniture. I adore this piece. Of the two Grand Seikos on the table, I love green, but the Onbashira is just a bit too big. This is more me. Okay, jumping in. I can see Ziggy saying big pushers and Alvin saying, gosh, the pusher. Yes, it does, doesn't it? All right, guys. And I can see Prime Creator saying something not right about the pushers. You know what? They're there for function, not for form. Let's jump to the pièce de résistance. Literally, the ultimate watch. It is the last watch on the show. It was also the ultimate 5970, the last of the 2004 to 2010 perpetual calendar chronos of the 5970 family. It's the 5970P, platinum, 40 millimeters, the final use of the Lange 2310 Bausch in a Patek Philippe chronograph. You can see it is big beat, big balance, slow beat, and with a traditional column wheel lateral clutch chronograph mechanism. Absolutely gorgeous. You can watch the mechanism disengaging from the chronograph center wheel. You can watch the recentering hammers fall on the heart cams at center. These were made from late 2008 to early 2010. The first ones featured the Geneva hallmark, the later series, the Patek Philippe seal. So this is a rarity among rarities with the Geneva hallmark. Beautifully finished, black polish, satin grain, Côte de Genève, perlage, gorgeous anglage and partridge eye polish to the screw sinks and jewel sinks. This is an icon, a legend in its own time, and it's the last of the 5970s. This is the one to own. I'll throw this one on the wrist and then we be done, guys. By the way, our raffle, you guys have voted and I have heard you. Our giveaway watch is going to be a Tudor. Our next free watch on this channel, I'm going to give you the details in future episodes, will be a Tudor. I'm leaning towards a Black Bay 58, a Black Bay GMT, or a Pelagos left-hand drive. You guys let me know in the comments below this video what Tudor model you would like to see me give away for our next raffle. It's going to be a Tudor. You guys tell me which one. Okay, I am Tim. They are the crew. This has been Watchbox Reviews and Watches Live. Thank you for everyone who joined in. Vote if you're watching this thing recorded and comment below. I'm Tim. This is Watchbox Studios. Time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.